Who was Queen Elizabeth? Chapter 1. Young Elizabeth. On September 7, 1533, a baby girl was born in a palace in Greenwich, England. Her father was King Henry VIII, a handsome man who loved to hunt, to eat and drink, and to be in the company of beautiful women. Her mother, Queen Anne, was young and very beautiful indeed. The baby had her father's bright red hair and pale skin. When she was only 3 days old, the little princess was brought to church. She wore a long dress of silk and lace. Over it, a tiny robe trimmed in fur kept her warm. One of the king's officers announced her arrival. The high and mighty Princess Elizabeth. It was a very grand occasion. The truth, however, was that Elizabeth's father was not at all happy over her birth. King Henry wanted a child of his to rule after him, but he did not want Elizabeth to be queen. Certainly, a woman could not rule a country all by herself. Besides, Henry already had one daughter from his first marriage. Princess Mary was now 17 years old. Queen Anne had promised Henry a boy. That's what Henry wanted. And Henry was a man who accepted to get what he wanted. If he didn't, there could be great trouble. And soon there was. After the little princess was born, Henry was convinced that Queen Anne would never bear a son. So he accused her of a crime she did not commit. Anne was put on trial and sentenced to death. Elizabeth was not even 3 years old when her mother was beheaded. Now King Henry was free to marry again. And within 2 weeks of Anne's death, he did. Luckily for the new queen, she gave birth to a baby boy. His name was Edward. What did this mean for little Elizabeth? It meant she was no longer important. In her father's eyes, she was no longer even a princess. She was sent away to a palace far from London. She hardly ever saw her father. Fortunately, Elizabeth had many loving people to look after her. There was her governess Catherine, called Cat. Elizabeth and Cat stayed friends long after Elizabeth grew up. Cat made sure that Elizabeth was happy and healthy. She also made sure that the king sent enough money for Elizabeth's need, food and clothes and even books. Another important person in Elizabeth's life was Roger Ascham. He was Elizabeth's private teacher. Although most girls in the 15s had no schooling, Elizabeth was the daughter of a king. She was expected to read and write. Young Elizabeth was a quick learner. Ascham called her the brightest of stars. Of all the girls he taught, Elizabeth studied math, history, literature, astronomy, and geography. She especially loved to read and would spend hours with books in Greek and Latin. By the time she was a teenager, Elizabeth knew 5 languages besides English: French, Italian, Spanish, Greek, and Latin. Sometimes she and Ascham would speak to each other in Greek or Latin. Elizabeth learned to play an instrument called the virginal. It was like a piano. She started singing when she was 6 and became very good at needlework. Other tutors instructed Elizabeth in horseback riding and dancing. There wasn't much time for play, and like all children of that time, Elizabeth was expected to act like a tiny adult. Every once in a while, young Elizabeth would overhear gossip. Henry's third wife had died. Then he divorced his next wife and beheaded the one after that. It was very risky for a woman to be married to King Henry. As the years went by, Elizabeth grew into a serious, intelligent teenager. In a portrait of Elizabeth at the age of 13, She wears a simple yet beautiful dress. It is one of the only portraits of young Elizabeth. A book lies open on a stand behind her. She is holding another book. Her fingers marked the page. It seemed as if she plans to start reading again as soon as the artist is finished painting. Despite growing up with no mother or father, Elizabeth was becoming an elegant and talented young woman. What Elizabeth did not know was that she would become the most important person in England, and wouldn't be long before powerful people, would want her dead. That is it for today, guys. I wouldn't like to bore you by creating a whole 1 to 2 hours of this video. If you would like to continue, check out the description box down below to continue with the next chapter titled The Princess is a Prisoner.